doesn't matter how big your boat is or how small it is, if it's sitting in salt water or freshwater for that matter, nature starts growing on the bottom of it. Everything below the water line, you're just going to start getting growth. The number one way that you prevent that is put bottom paint on it. If you're lucky, you can go 3-4 years before you have to reapply bottom paint, because it's a multi-$1,000 job. If you really do it right, you have to put an epoxy barrier on, and then you put on your bottom paint. Some of it's ablating, so that means it basically starts sloughing off along with all of the growth that grows on it. Some of it is just so slick that bottom growth doesn't want to even attach to it. And then there is bottom paint that just has poison in it, literally has copper in it, and things don't like to grow on copper. It doesn't taste good. Or it has a mix of all three of those things. No matter what, if you're going to have a boat sit in the water, you have to do that. But there's ongoing maintenance on top of that, especially if you're in the Florida East Coast area. You can attest to some people have to get their boats dove monthly, if not every other month if they're lucky. Up here in the Pacific Northwest, every 3 months to 6 months. If you're in the salt water, you really need to be able to get your hull cleaned. And that's a bit of a challenge, especially if you've got bottom paint that's that ablative, so that it basically keeps sloughing off. Well, if you're scrubbing the bottom of your boat to maintain that bottom paint, you're also scrubbing off your bottom paint. That's a problem because, again, you're going to have to reapply that bottom paint, and it's expensive to do. So one other item that's on the market that, boy, there's a lot of conjecture about this. It's almost like talking about religion or politics on Thanksgiving, is an ultrasonic system that pulses the hull or your running gear, and it basically stops the growth, the organic growth, from growing on your running gear and or bottom. But there's a lot of conjecture out there, whether or not it's snake oil, whether it's real, and we're here to walk you through the system that we installed. It's an ultrasonic hull cleaning system. We tested it out for an entire season, and we're going to go through and, well, share with you, did it work? Did it work a lot? Did it work a little bit? And what did it cost? So with that said, we'll get right to it. So this right here is the Hull Shield. There's a bunch of different brands out here right now. Hull Shield tends to be kind of ruling the market, so to speak. This one here is the HD4. HD, it's their double throw down line. It's their new one that they really says has higher pulse rates and greater signal to really retard or inhibit the growth of organics on wherever the unit is installed. It has this head unit that connects to 4 separate transducers. That's probably where they came up with the HD4. That would check out. But this unit here, it goes through and it basically sends out pulses every handful of seconds to be able to supposedly transmit through your hull or through your running gear and be able to keep the growth inhibited and or stop the growth on the bottom of your boat. That would be an amazing product if it worked, because you would no longer have to scrub the bottom of your boat. Your bottom paint's going to last longer, so you can get some return on investment that way. And gosh, anytime that you don't have to jump in the water or pay a diver to go under the water and do that, that's probably a good thing. So that would be a win-win. These things aren't cheap. So this system, to begin with, the way that we tested it was we didn't actually put it on the hull the first go around. We put it on our running gear because you obviously can get growth on your rudders, you get growth on your shafts and on your props, and that can really be a challenge, especially up here in the Pacific Northwest. You get barnacles, it'll cut top speed off, it will obviously impact your fuel economy. But the biggest one, it was the easiest thing to see if the darn thing worked. So that's what we first did. We found a boat in our marina that had all clean props at the same time that we had our props cleaned and our rudders cleaned and painted as well. So that was going to be our baseline boat to be able to compare to our boat. Both sterns were pointing the same direction to the sun, so they basically had the entire same sun pattern for the entire day, that it was either going to promote or inhibit growth. Same marina, we were only one pier away, so we don't really have any major differences between the two boats. Really, the major difference was having the hull shield. So throughout the progression of that first installation, we actually saw some remarkable difference. I'll show you a little bit of that now. So here's our reference boat, same marina. They haven't cleaned, again, we've cleaned 5 times in the same period when this boat was clear. It's just, there's a lot of growth in this marina at Roche Harbor, but here's more importantly, look at these rudders. So they really have the same sun exposure, and you can see that they definitely have growth on them. So to begin with, I was a little concerned, is it just because they are vertical and therefore they didn't get as much growth because of their orientation to the sun? But again, our baseline boat here that was cleaned at the beginning of the season when we had these transducers put on, you can see that growth on the rudders. And again, we've scrubbed the back of our boat 5 times since we've had them put on. Otherwise, we would have the exact same growth that you see on these trim tabs on the back of this boat. Here's the stern of our boat, and it's been 5 cleanings on the back to scrub exactly what you saw off that growth that you saw on the reference boat. But look at these rudders. So I have not touched these rudders since this ultrasonic transducer, one was on each of these rudders, and you really fundamentally don't see any growth. It's pretty amazing. Here's a close-up on the rudders. And as you can see, I got growth already starting to pop up again on the back and on the trim tabs, but the rudders are really staying clean. So, I know a lot of people do these reviews on putting them on the hull, but I really wanted to put them on the running gear and show what that difference is. And then it also would kind of tell me whether or not I should put them on the hull. And based upon this experience, we're definitely going to put them on the hull, because it just saves a ton of time and material and wear and tear on the bottom paint being scrubbed and thinning out by having to clean it constantly. But there's just a lot of great upsides to this. But that's our findings. Let me know if you have used the same ultrasonic hull system to keep it clean, and if you've had different results. So already, just from pulling the boat out, we can see that there's no growth on the rudders. And if you look at these props, they do not have prop speed on them, and they have no barnacles. But ironically, the shafts that have prop speed, they're insulated from the ultrasonic cleaner, and therefore there's some barnacles on those, and definitely barnacles on our sinks. So because of what we're seeing here, and I've cleaned the sides on the bottoms probably 5 times this year just by getting in the water and doing this. So I will be putting another set of ultrasonic transducers on the hull this time, so to really cut down on even having to clean that more. But I would say it's a success. Interested in other people's feedback and what they've seen when they've used this as well. So saying that, let's show you how we installed that system on the running gear or on the rudders, because it's not probably something that would be intuitive right off the bat as to how it is installed, but actually makes pretty good sense. Let's move on from where the control unit is, where all 4 of those transducers connect, and show you where those transducers connect on the boat. So based upon those results, honestly, we saw a little bit of growth, but nothing near the growth compared to a boat that basically was serviced at the same time, had the same cleaned running gear and rudders. So Our immediate test on the running gear says we saw a difference. And that's very positive as far as we were concerned. Obviously cuts down on having to do any maintenance with diving on props and cleaning those, as well as the rudders. On top of that, it saves you from also, looking at other types of products that really cut down on maintenance of growth on your running gear, like Prop Speed is an example. It's kind of a rubberized product that gets painted on your shafts and on your props, so that organic growth can't start on those, or barnacles can't really grasp a hold. Again, that's a type of product that is just so slick that something organic can't grow on it. Not that, that's expensive, so not having to do that, and that has to be refreshed probably every 2 to 3 years when you have the boat pulled. So not doing that can be a positive as well. It worked on the running gear based upon the variables that we have on our boat, but putting it on the hull, that's a whole different thing, right? We have a 50-foot boat and it has a beam of about 15 feet. So when you put these transducers on a hull to be able to drive down that growth or be able to control it a bit better, I could be skeptical that maybe that would work, or it's just having to cover so much space. There's a question whether or not that would actually pay off. So let's talk about how that actually gets installed on the boat. So with the size of our boat, and online they have a sizing. How many transducers do you need based upon the length and width of your boat? Our particular boat needed 4 transducers. We have 2 that are one on each side of the keel that are farther back, and then we have 2 that are forward up in closer to the bow of the boat that are also just on each side of the keel, port and starboard. Now, an example of this is, here we have another transducer. Again, this is the transducer that covers the port side of the boat closer to the stern. We have another transducer that is forward on the port, and that covers the bow area. And then over on this side, we have another transducer. This just covers the starboard side of the boat. And again, we have another transducer that's forward of that to cover the bow area on the starboard side. The unit that controls them is the exact same unit, so now we have 2 of those. One that covers our running gear and another unit that controls the 4 transducers for the hull. Since we put these on, we had the bottom paint basically cleaned, just pressure washed last time we pulled the boat, and we installed these. So far, we've had the boat in the water about 6 months now, and we've seen, compared to boats next to us and around us that have just had their hull paint done within that last 6 months, again, we have seen a result. I think 6 months. I think 6 months is a little too soon to be able to say that it works on the hulls. Gosh, it's such a large surface. I'm somewhat skeptical whether or not this is going to work on the hull. There's a bunch of reports that say they work well and testimonies, but on our boat, at least at this point, I think we've seen a difference. We've had the diver down to do some other work on the boat. We had to change some props out. Unfortunately, we had vibration and had to have that taken care of. And the hull, at that point, looked clean. There was nothing that was needed to be done. So I'd say the jury is out. We're going to check back in about 6 months to see if it works on these larger surfaces like the hull. But I will say, just to conclude, I really did see the difference on the running gear, and that in itself pays off, making sure that we have the most efficient running gear possible. We don't have any barnacles or any growth on our props, which saves us in fuel and obviously saves us in maintenance as well. So this here is one of the transducers that comes off of that head unit. It just has a cable that runs from there. The connector on the head unit actually has a gasket, so it's a watertight fitting on that. This transducer actually puts out the ultrasonic pulse. You can actually hear these things chirp. They do that probably every 5 to 10 seconds. You can hear them go off. The reason that it is mounted to the engine mount on this engine is This engine mount, it is metal, and it has no rubber gaskets or nothing that insulates the remainder of the running gear. So that means from here on this motor mount, all the way through our transmission, through our drive shaft, all the way to the prop, really is able to have the signal of the ultrasonic pulse go all the way through that, in theory. So there is one of those transducers. There's one on each of our engines. To be able to prep this, you have to grind off any of the paint, anything that might insulate the ultrasonic transducer, and then you use good old-fashioned JB weld, and you weld that directly to that metal surface. The other two transducers we put on our rudders, and basically did the same exact thing. We made sure to remove any paint or corrosion, clean that particular surface, which was, as you can see here, the rudder shaft, and it has, again, no insulation, no rubber parts. When it sends a signal through that shaft, it goes right down into the water without any insulation whatsoever. So again, in theory, that should be able to drive that ultrasonic signal all the way through that rudder and be able to keep growth off. Let's switch topics to cost. So let's set a baseline right off the bat. Having paint put on your hull, anti-fouling paint. The first time you do it, you need to put on an epoxy coat, and you need to put on a couple layers of anti-fouling paint, whichever type you choose. The ranges for a 50-foot boat to get that done is quotes I've seen from $8,000 to $20,000. The $20,000 end tends to be when they have to strip any paint that's already been on there and start from scratch with a clean gel coat, and then put the epoxy on, and then build it up with a couple coats of anti-fouling paint. That's not cheap, but it's important that we start there because this will have an impact on hull paint and when you have to get that done again. The next one is dives. So I've seen pricing for divers anywhere from $200 up to $600. So for today's exercise, it's going to be, this is average to $400, but check out in your area what divers cost, and it's going to impact what your break even and return on investment on, if you're contemplating an ultrasonic, hull cleaning type of a system. The frequency of either of those, bottom paint, in some areas people do it, especially if it's an ablative anti-fouling paint, which means it basically sloughs off so that nothing can attach to it. Obviously it's sloughing, so it's going away over time. And if you're having your boat dove a lot, if you're down in Florida, some people have their boats dove once a month to be able to keep the growth off of the bottom. And if you have ablative bottom paint, it's going to go away faster, so it's going to be every couple of years you have to get that redone. If you don't have to do the epoxy and you just do the ablative, you probably get it done, especially if you do it yourself, for something closer for yard fees and the paint, probably $2,000, $1,500 to $2,000. Having somebody else do it's going to reach up into the $4,000 area to get that redone. Now the dives, we're saying on a monthly basis, if you're average $400, that adds up pretty fast in a year, right? If you've got 12 months and you're $400, well, you can do the math. That's an ugly number that you're staring at. Ultrasonic hull cleaning system, and again, it's really it just extends how long you can go before you have to clean or repaint the bottom of the boat. It's not 100% getting rid of any growth. It really just slows it down. It slows it down, as we saw on the running gear, significantly. On the hull, we'll find out. We're going to report back in another 6 months on that. The system that has 4 transducers, it is $2,000. That's not a small number. But when you think about diving, if you do dives on your boat, it's $400. If you have to do them on a monthly basis after 5 months, well, you've broken even on the system. If you're up in the Pacific Northwest here, it's usually once every 4 to 6 months, so you're a year and a quarter before you're break even, or as long as 2.5 years. before you break even on a system like this. However, if you're not scrubbing the bottom of your boat, that means that you're not wearing your ablative or metal-based, like a copper type of a paint that organisms don't like to grow on. You're still scrubbing it away, so you're going to have to get it painted sooner. So if you could extend the life of your bottom paint by a year or 2 years, well, this would have a significant return on investment. Not only how not having to dive the boat and have it cleaned, but it would obviously increase the life of the bottom paint as well. But like I said, early indications are it appears that it works. However, $2,000, is it going to work out for extending our dives, etc.? So we're going to report back in 6 months to be able to give a check back with that. Some other questions that might come to your head: does the system need to be on all the time? Yes, it does. If it's not if it's not turned on, it's not working. So you do have to keep it running while it's in the water. You probably then are asking, well, what's the current draw? The fuse is a 5 amp fuse, so it's using a little less than half of that. So it's about 2 amp that it's drawing on a 12 volt system. Or on a 24 volt system, you can figure out your wattage, and it's the same system. You don't have to buy a 24 volt one or a 12 volt one. The system is able to run on that 12 volt to 24 volt range. If you've had any experiences with these types of systems, positive or negative, I'd love to see it down in the comments. We'll continue reporting out on the system. Again, if you're putting on your running gear, we feel pretty good about it. One last note that I will give you: do check your running gear if you're going to put this on your running gear. If you have a vibration or a coupler isolator, and it goes right between the engine coupler and the shaft coupler, some boats are built with these, and it's to reduce vibrations. But it would obviously create an insulation between the engine and the shaft and then your prop. So if you put the system on your engine, it's not going to do anything. It's going to stop at that anti-vibration coupler. So just take a look. If it's metal on metal at that coupler, you're good. If this is something that you're thinking about going down that route, you could also skip doing the rudders like we did and just do your running gear. If you were to do that, they do have systems that have single transducers where they have just one controller. Those are $500 a piece, so basically $500 per transducer, whether you get the system that has the individual ones or you get the system that has 4 transducers on the on this single controller. So hopefully this helps out in your decision making, whether or not it's something you'll be looking into as you're thinking about systems that drive down maintenance so you can be out on the water and actually using the boat. Have a great week. Peace.